Hi everyone, so this video is going to be a little bit different to what I normally do, but hopefully it'll still be of interest. Now it's Christmas, and I've got a new toy. So what is it, I hear you ask? Well, I've never seen one before, no one has, but I'm guessing it's a it's actually a bristle blaster. Now, I first heard about these watching Chris and Rob from the Salvage Rebuilds UK channel. They always referred to it as the Whippy Wheel, which I think is just their nickname for it. After a little research, it turns out that particular model is the Worth DBS 3500. I believe it may also be called the 3600 in some other markets. A little more research, and it turns out that a German company called Monty were actually the original creators, so I'm assuming the Worth model is made under license or possibly just rebadged, I'm not sure. Anyway, Monty refer to these as bristle blasters, and from what I've seen they look like impressive pieces of kit. The idea with them is to emulate sandblasting by repeatedly impacting the surface with sharp wire teeth, rather than just scraping and peening like a wire wheel attachment in the grinder would do. Now that all sounds great until you look at how much they cost. There's electric and battery ones as well as pneumatic, ranging from around $650 for the bare unit up to several thousand for a multi-piece kit with carry case. The one from Worth is only available to trade customers, but from what I've seen it's not that much cheaper. After a fruitless search for second-hand units on eBay, I came across this Chinese clone. The model is a Weiland WN6050 and it looks to be a copy of the Worth pneumatic version. Now, I'd just like to point out that this video is in no way sponsored, I've had no contact with the seller and I paid for this myself. All in, it came to just over £200, although that's still one of the most expensive tools I've certainly ever bought. So, let's see if it's any good or not. Right, so to try it out, I've got 3 bits of metal, varying degrees of rust. Starting with this one, which is lightly corroded but not massively pitted, to be honest. Moving up, that one, a little bit more pitting, slightly heavier, but again nothing too serious. And then this one, which has got some pretty serious deep pits. It's starting to sort of peel away and delaminate in places, so it'll be interesting to see how it copes with all of those. Well, first impressions, I am astonished how good that is. It's really rough as well. It's not like a wire brush finish in the grinder. It's really rough. It really is like it's been sandblasted. That's what it feels like. That's remarkable. You sort of think, oh, I can still see pits in it, but actually it's just sort of shadows really. If you get it, if you turn it at different angles, you can see, no, it really has got everything. That is amazing. I'm going to compare it with a wire brush. I'll do that on this bit here, and we'll just see what difference, side by side you can see. But that is, for the first go, that is amazing. Well, the first thing you notice is just how smooth it is, which is what that's what I've always known really. That's sort of my main process that I would use really, is the wire brush and the grinder. But compared to that, it literally is like it's been sandblasted. If anything, it's slightly rougher, I would say. It depends on the coarseness of the grit that you use, but that's amazing. That is astonishing, that really is. It doesn't seem to peen the corners either, or any ridges or anything like a wire brush does. On the sort of leading edge of the wire brush, it seems to, you get that kind of peening over effect, but you don't seem to get that on the Bristle blaster. That's amazing. Yeah, that's so different, that really is. The other thing, of course, with it being smooth is it doesn't give it a very good key for the paint. I've suffered a few times, especially with zinc primers, because they're not quite as good at sticking as some of the etch primers, but yeah, I doubt it'd have any trouble at all sticking to that. That is amazing. Up next is the slightly more corroded piece of box section. Let's see how it fares with this. Now that's interesting because it definitely struggled a bit more with that one. I had to slow right down on the speed. But yeah, it's definitely got that bit and that bit, I would say, but they're probably the least corroded areas. But yeah, it's definitely struggling with some of the deeper pits on this bit. It hasn't quite got them. Weirdly, it kind of feels smoother than the previous bit of metal, strangely. But yeah, no, it definitely struggled with that. Let's try the wire brush just to compare again as well. I would say that the wire brush didn't do any better really at getting out those pits. I'd say the similar sort of pitted areas that the blaster struggled with, the wire wheel did as well. And of course it's definitely much smoother. Although the difference isn't as stark this time, I have to say, it isn't. But the wire wheel is, you know, it is noticeably smoother, definitely. Right, let's see how it does on some really pitted stuff. Yeah, it's definitely starting to struggle now. The clean bit on this edge here, that looks really good. But the really pitted areas, it is struggling. It is. Although weirdly, you move your head actually, and depending on how the light hits it, it looks a lot better from some angles. So it may just be the lighting. I'll try and move it around for you. Yeah, it definitely looks better from some angles, so it may just be reflecting the rusty surfaces around it. I'm not sure. This shot here was about as good as it looked. Let's see how the wire wheel compares. Yeah, again, I would say the Bristle Blaster didn't do any worse than the wire wheel. Although I have to say on this one, actually, the surface feels very, very similar. It definitely feels like it's starting to peen it or smooth it rather than blast it. That's interesting. So that's possibly a combination of me pressing a little bit harder, which I did, because it was quite pitted on this one. But also maybe it can't quite cope with undulations and pits and height differences as well. Possibly, I don't know. But that's interesting. It's definitely rougher. It is still noticeably rougher than the wire wheel, but not by as much, especially that first bit of steel. That's interesting. I thought I'd try a piece of checker plate to see how it copes with uneven surfaces. It did seem to struggle with that. I couldn't get the area directly behind the ridge without changing angles. I guess this is because of how the wheel spins and the path each bristle takes. Overall though, it wasn't much of a problem. Right, something I thought that would be interesting to see would be if I tried going over the bit I'd already wire wheeled, would that still have the same effect, or does it only like sort of fresh steel really? I can't see why it wouldn't, because it seems to me to be a kind of surface denting process, I suppose, or kind of hitting and slightly moving each bit as the bristles hit. I don't know really, but yeah, I thought I'd give that a go. Right, interesting observation. It definitely does clean over wire wheeled steel, but it's nothing like what it was the first pass on that first bit that I did. That's so rough in comparison. But I did overlap a little bit as well on that bit in the middle there, and that's quite smooth as well. So I think what's happening is that the wire brush attachment, or the, what do they call them, the belts they call them, I think it's quite poor quality and it's just blunted quite quickly. So I think that first pass was how it should be, and I think it's now just lost the edge that it had, which is a shame. So I wonder if it would make sense, if they're compatible, to get the genuine MBX belts and try that on this and see what difference that makes, because that would still be a fraction of the cost of a genuine MBX machine. So yeah, that would be interesting. Right, I thought I'd try it on some sheet steel next, because I always have trouble if you're trying to clean up sheet steel with the wire brush, is it always puts loads of heat in it and it ends up warping it. I've had no end of trouble with that in the past, so I tend not to do that anymore. So yeah, it'd be interesting to try that out. So yeah, it's pretty much completely cold. I mean, there's a tiny bit of heat, I would say, but almost nothing. Yeah, that's amazing. Compared to a wire brush, that is barely any heat going into that. Yeah, I might just try a wire brush for comparison. Ow, that is... yeah, I actually can't touch that. That is so hot in comparison. I mean, I literally can't leave my finger on there, so that's got to be like 50, 60, 70 degrees at least, compared to that, which is just still cold. Amazing. Right, the other thing I thought would be interesting would be ECoting, because there's plenty of that on chassis and things like that. There's a bit of glue from a bit of tape still left on that, but this is well, quite a rusty bit of jacking point from the traffic. So yeah, let's try that. That's interesting. So yeah, it didn't seem to have any trouble with the ECoting. They removed it fine, but I couldn't get that bit on the top edge. at the angle I was going. So it obviously, the way the bristles work, it just couldn't get that bit. So we're turning on the side, and it got it lovely. So yeah, that was interesting. But no trouble with ECoting. Does that fine. The other thing I wondered about was stone chip coatings. Yeah, so it seems to struggle a bit with funny shapes. It likes a flat surface. That's clearly its, sort of natural comfort zone, really. But it's not done too badly, actually. And I tried to sort of angle it because I can imagine you'll struggle with quite significant variations in belt wear by using the leading edge of it to get in the corner. I haven't completely got all of the seam sealer and stuff out of that, but no, it's not done too badly. In fairness, it's not done too badly. It seems to me, having had limited experience with sandblasting, but nonetheless a little bit, it struggles in a similar way with thick rubbery stone chip. It's kind of bouncing off it, really. It doesn't really want to get underneath it. The process is clearly a bit like needle gunning. I think it's sort of a repeated hitting indentation process, which is quite clever, but it does seem to struggle a little bit with the stone chip, but clearly it can do it, so just takes a bit longer, I guess. But yeah, interesting. In summary then, I would say you get what you pay for. Clearly this is a cheap clone of the real thing, but nonetheless that first pass was really very impressive. I'm going to get some genuine belts to try, and I suspect that will improve things massively. I can't talk about longevity obviously, but the main body does feel well built. The other thing I thought was quite interesting, some of the newer models now come with something called an accelerator bar. It's basically a metal rod that sticks through the bristles and gives an extra flick at the last minute. I can see the point of that, but it does seem like it would limit the usability of the machine, as you'd have to hold it in exactly the right spot, and it's another thing to get in the way when you're in tight areas, so I'm not sure on that one. I haven't tried it, as this one didn't come with one, so I can't comment on the effectiveness, but I'd imagine it helps with some of the deeper pits. All in all then, I'm pretty happy with the purchase. I'll definitely revisit this in the future once I've tried the genuine belts. But for now, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.